Hello. Let's have a look today at the Citizens Ballot Initiative. So, what does that even mean? That means that the citizens want to have a direct voice in government. And it means usually that the government has ceased to be responsive to the citizens. Can we relate to that? Obviously. so, um, so then it's a reasonable response to want to have a say in how government works. And it has happened several times recently that in certain states, the people have voted to maintain access to abortion, for instance, even though the government said that they couldn't have abortion. So there are certain things, sometimes a specific topic, but I think, we have experienced a major lack of responsiveness on the part of government to what the people feel and think and would like to see. So how can we deal with this? Well, let's deal with it on the basis of a state, I think, first. Maybe we can get to a point where we have a federal citizens initiative, some kind of initiative coming from the people for the whole country. But let's think about on a state basis. So, first of all, this actually has happened quite a lot in some states. About half the states actually have some sort of citizens ballot initiative. And in some states, for instance, like the state where I live, Delaware, every time I ask a Republican, how about a citizens ballot initiative, a Republican representative, they say no, because the Democrats would use that to pull something over the people. And every time I ask a Democratic representative, they say the opposite. No, because they're afraid that the Republicans will use that to put something past the people. Well, obviously, they don't have much respect for the people. But on the other hand, it's also true that where this has happened the most, I think California, there have been many, many problems with the populist approach, because a lot of times most people, they know what they want, but they don't really have much idea of what effect it's going to have on their lives or on government. So sometimes a proposition, they call it a proposition, can have the opposite effect to what they want. So like they have voted in the past to have a maximum amount of property tax, but then that has meant that government has not been able to raise revenues. And gradually over time, other taxes were limited. And basically, the state really ran out of money. And that's a problem because there are some things that the state has to do. I mean, the state has to be in charge of infrastructure, many things, actually. So it is a bit of a problem if it comes just from the people. And then another problem, of course, was that in California, I think you had to get a certain number of people signatures in order to bring up a citizen's proposal. And so eventually gathering signatures became big business, and people were actually paid for their signatures, and it became a job to gather signatures. So that's a problem, right? That's sort of back to the same thing again, where you're really buying. People are able to buy influence over the government. By the way, I'm going to show you this book, Renovating Democracy. This explains very clearly many of the problems, and it also comes up with a proposal for a solution. So the solution would be for proposals to come from the people, but to be vetted by a certain body of people who actually know what's going on, who understand things that are going on. So there should be some sort of measures put in place. So, like, for instance, there should be like a minimum number or a minimum percentage of the population of the state should be required to have voted yes for a proposition before it can pass. So often you wouldn't get, say, more than 60% of the people voting in any sort of referendum or in even like a federal election or whatever. You often don't get many people voting. So that's a problem right there. So, but there should be a certain minimum percentage of the whole population of the state involved before something can pass. So there's ways to do that, of course. Also, there should be some sort of requirement for a discussion of the values behind any sort of policy proposal. And then you should probably put in something like you shouldn't be allowed to pay for people's signatures if you're going to have a signature based proposal. If you've got something where you have to have a certain number of signatures, and then there should be some sort of assessment on the possible or the likely consequences if this proposal is passed. But how can that assessment occur? So this is these people. Who are these people? Nathan Goddles and Nicholas Berggruen, right? They wrote this book. They are proposing to have sort of a body of people who are somewhat experts and maybe in their field, but not necessarily in politics, but who understand what's going on. They'd have to have some expertise in politics, something or other, so that they can see, from a political perspective too, because this is essentially something political. Something political is going to have to happen, even though it's based on a certain change in values that you want to see. So maybe university professors or people who have served as mayors in their town or the county or whatever. Well, I guess the county exec rather than a mayor. Just people who are educated enough and experienced enough to be able to make a reasonable assessment. Maybe a couple of ex-policemen, but not too many, because usually a lot of state governments are full of ex-policemen. So maybe one. But people who really, have a sense of how this is going to work. And this is like through discussion, and they can't be particularly partisan. You don't want to have a discussion between Republicans and Democrats. So you want to have people who are not like just the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. This is not meant to be a discussion between those two. This is a discussion of the values behind something, behind an idea. So then this body would be appointed in some way or elected. So maybe like a university in the state could be asked to send one person, or a hospital could be asked to send a person, or several municipalities could be asked to send a person, right? So however they come together, and that has to be decided by each state, then they are tasked with looking at a proposal from the people and coming up with an assessment of its effect on minorities, an assessment on its effect on government, and basically assessing it and then working out a policy that can have the effect that people want. And then once it's been sort of worked through by this body of people, then it can be sent as a policy proposal to be voted on by the whole state. And then, as I said before, a certain percentage of people have to approve it. So there shouldn't be too many proposals for each election. There shouldn't be too many proposals overall, because we do have a government for a reason. It is an elected government, But right now they're at such a, impasse that nothing can happen. So this is a way for us to reach in and to try to actually make something happen. Maybe we won't need this, say in 20 years or so, if we can get beyond this whole partisan thing. But I think we won't need it only if we have figured out how to educate our children in school, for instance, in high school, so that they learned how to discuss, how to not be just partisan, how to see other people's point of view, how to be critical thinkers, how the government works. So all these things, it's pretty easy to graduate high school without having done these things these days. So we need a major change in education. Okay. Thank you for listening.